now you're you're now back.
We're back. Back. Everybody wave. Woo! We're back. Listen, it is great to be here. It is Friday. I hope you have something to drink. I have my Diet Coke. I know I should be drinking my hand. I also, though, have throat coat in this because the
Me too.
It's just giving out. Now, what are you drinking, Mina?
I'm having throat coat also. I feel like it's preventative for the C virus. I don't know.
I know. What are you drinking, Kathy?
Throat coat, but it's Chardonnay flavored.
Are you drinking anything, Kelly?
Of course I am.
Why do you have your earbuds in?
Because I always do every day when we're on this.
I'm having a vodka tonic after this, though. That is happening.
Vodka tonic. Catherine,
I'm just having
drinking
some water.
anything?
I just realized that my water glass is empty, so I'm gonna have to go fill it. But
Okay, so you can come back. Kelly, I saw you sneaking some water.
Water.
Okay. So listen, we're very happy to have back Mina Hartong.
I'm happy to be back. I miss you, ladies. Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, no, today's topic is teaching comedy, but I have to say right up front, I've been really enjoying. Everybody should check out Mina's Instagram story, or is it an Insta story? Her Corona Minute. It is so funny.
Thank you. I'm having fun doing it. It's on Instagram. It's on Facebook. I'm trying to learn story. It is, Jane. It is a slow going thing.
But I love that it's quick and then it's in and out and you do different
it's a
topics.
minute of comedy, Monday to Friday.
And I love when you talk about your wife, but what was it? I love at the end, you always say, and be like the lesbians and stay home.
That's my hashtag, but I'm sure it already belongs to somebody else.
But that is a great tagline. I thought that was wonderful.
That's how I end it.
Anyway, so do check that out. Oh, the other thing we have to know about Mina is please tell us up front about your special is coming up on May 16th. I want everybody to see it.
Okay, you want me to talk about that for a minute? Yeah, okay, great. So that's also all over Instagram and Facebook. I'm trying to get much better at this social media thing in quarantine. So I have a solo comedy special that I did at the Magnolia Room in Norwalk, Connecticut, a beautiful cabaret space that is now closed temporarily. Oh. So they are streaming previous shows that were pre-recorded on their YouTube channel. So next Saturday you can watch with me and we can comment together. And they're going to.
How long is it?
It's just under an hour, so like 55 minutes.
So this is your big special.
It is. I worked on that for like 10 years. I pieced together all my sets. I'm doing a little bit of my solo stuff, so it's a little bit of drama, a little bit of comedy. I'm wearing a really nice.
This is your coming out party, and you're all dressed up.
I got professional makeup. It's super fancy.
Oh, professional makeup. I just want you to know these cheeks are because we've been talking about makeup. I just noticed there's too much.
When I go on stage for that, I actually pay someone to put my makeup on me. But yeah, so we're going to stream it next Saturday on the Magnolia Room YouTube channel. I'm going to watch with you all. And then the great thing is I have a lot of international fans, so they can watch whenever that week.
Oh, that is great.
Yeah.
So it's on YouTube. If people Google like Mina Hartong and YouTube, will it come up next?
They'll find it all because it's all linked to all social media.
So, and we'll remind people next week too.
I appreciate it. I'll send you a little invite.
Okay, great. So today's topic is teaching comedy. Oh, if you have a link too, like I'll run this show on the Facebook thing and just pop it in there.
We'll do it.
Any place.
Thank you.
We like to help our team. Anyway, so our topic this week is teaching comedy. But my first question is, can you teach comedy?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
But I'm thinking strictly like, the K through 12 experience, meaning like that's when I've done it in a school. I don't think you can coach somebody as a professional comic up to a certain point. And then if they don't have it, they don't have it. Right? Because to me, when I teach comedy, like 70% of it, maybe even 80% of it is the writing. So that has always been my approach. It's like I'll do like a semester-long class with high school kids, and we'll spend half the semester writing and editing.
How many classes are in a semester for the?
Probably 12 to 15. And then we always end with them performing 3 minutes. And I never let them do more than 3 because, if it's not good.
Are they doing a monologue or it's a sketch or what is it?
They're doing pure stand-up. So they come in with a story, a personal story.
Yeah.
And then we try out several different stories until I can feel like, oh, that's going to be the one about your cat or the one about your grandpa or whatever it is, or the one about hating high school, etc. And the big thing for them is teaching them all that stuff that we've already learned, right? Like, or that we're still honing is the rule of threes,
Yeah.
you know, the timing. A lot of times with the new comics, I don't know, no matter what age they are, I was like this too. They give too much background, they give too much setup, you know, they go in too many tangents. You got to do the setup and get to the meat of the story. And then sometimes it just ends up being a very humorous story. So it's a little bit of like the Moth and stand up. But then I've had a couple of kids who've come through, like Sean Prince, if he's listening, like he just has the gift. Like he could go and do it.
Wow.
And you know, he did a story about his dad teaching him to drive, and it was like out on the floor. It's hilarious.
Wow. What do you guys think? Can you teach comedy?
I think you can teach the mechanics of comedy. I think that, there's a bit of it that's skill, but then there's a lot of it that's just a ton of hard work. And people do have that, rawness to, there's some people that just come in and they have this rawness to them. But Kelly, tell me if you've had this. I've had people that are they're just brilliant on stage. They'll come in and be brilliant, and then they do nothing with it. And then they have somebody who comes in and they learn it, and they go to open mics and they start doing it, and then they start building it. But those are the ones that stick with it. I have found like 8 out of 10 times these people come in with this raw gift.
Yeah. I feel the exact same way, Kathy. Like someone can just walk in, like they could walk on stage and they don't have to work at it. But the little eager beaver in the back who's making all the mistakes, persistence gets you pretty far in this
The
business.
grit, right? The determination and the grit.
And risk. Kel, what do you think?
I think you can, same thing. Like I teach stand-up and improv. So it's like improv's a little bit easier to teach, I think, because really it's just about support and being a cheerleader. Good improv is very hard to teach. Improv fundamentals to me are like, it's all about play. And so I enjoy that very much. When you get into a more expert level of teaching improv, I think that that's where you really have to hone those skills and realize that you have to be an actor to be able to pull off good improv.
I think it's kind of like learning Spanish in improv, like easy to be good, quick, and then you hit intermediate or advanced, and then that knocks people out.
Right.
Improv is also just always, like you said, Kelly, about making the other scene partner look good, right? It's about being a champion, whereas stand up, you are it. You're the storyteller.
I love that.
Going on there.
I love that control. I'm the writer, the director, the producer, and
especially for women, you can put yourself on stage. You don't have to wait for somebody to give you the chance to do it. You can just put yourself up there.
I've heard actors say that they like, working with another person or with a group, because then you can blame them if it doesn't work. But it's on you if it doesn't.
Well, there are plenty of comedians that blame other people if they don't
like
do
the
well.
Audience.
They're delightful.
Nice. Because I'm also from the acting background, and all the actors that I know say they would be terrified to do stand-up. They would just be, and when they tell them I do it, they're like, I can't believe you do that. It's too frightening.
It's interesting to me that the actors, I think, do better more quickly in stand-up. If you have an acting or improv background, I think because you already speak from the true place, you're not in your head. I really came at it from writing. There were a lot of things I had to get over. But like Kel, I'm sure you came on as a performer, so like you're already, fearless and
well, I think for years for me, I came from like performing since I could talk. So I was always in voice lessons and dance class and then acting and whatever. So I think for many years I was a way better performer than writer. And then the writing came secondary for me. So I try to see that in my students when I'm teaching stand-up, because there are some that are just super charismatic and they have nothing to say. And so I do try to coach them like, hey, listen, I was the same way. I wasn't sure who I was. And once you figure that out, it'll click for you, but it takes a long time.
And then you get the students who just think that they can just go up and do it.
Right.
That it is improv. And then, so I say to my students at the top of the semester, I'm like, if you don't like to write, you're in the wrong room. Because of course, in the business also that person who's a really good writer could end up being a comedy writer, not just a performer.
And they can make more money. I like to say that advertising is like comedy for money. And so is TV writing.
I agree, Jen. I think that there are like people come in 2 different tracks. One, you either have really amazing stage presence and delivery and performance, or you're a good writer.
Yeah.
and you start off the same, right? And you kind of stay there. And then for a little while though, the people who can perform and don't have any, they have this amazing stage presence, they start making some traction.
Yeah.
But people who write and stay with it and start working on that, they gain it as well. And so it's always this kind of leapfrog kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you got to figure out the thing that you're not good at. And that's where you work.
And that's what you got to work on. I spent a whole year working on my performing, and then I spent another year taking acting classes. I went into improv and I was sort of good at it right away. I went into acting. I was so awful, like worse than the makeup. I was so awful because nobody had ever listened in my family, and acting is reacting and it's listening. And they're like, well, that was just a foreign concept. It took me the whole effing year. It was like the next to last class was something clicked. And like now I can't believe.
When I started like recording my sets more often, then I really started getting going with the writing. I didn't do that at first. And then I would just pick them apart. First I would like, you know, be a perfectionist about it. But now it's just fun with the writing, picking it apart, pulling apart. There's some jokes that I've worked on for years that I finally got the right punchline, you know, and I kept telling them and kept recording them. It's such a musical thing, stand up. That's why I love it so much. It's so complex.
I think there is music in it. Kath?
Yeah. I think one of the things that Kelly had said to me, like, I think 2 years ago, she didn't say it, she kind of yelled it, but
Oh,
no.
okay.
Way to go.
It doesn't sound like her at all.
Could this
get out of your
face
notebook.
yell?
Get out of your notebook. You know, like we'd be there for a show, and my head would just be in my notebook. Like, what's my set? What am I going to do? And that going through the lines. Well, Kelly was there, and she's like looking at the people there, and like observing the people, and you know, knowing that this is the piece of advice he gave me was, this experience is a one-time thing. It's with the people in the room and me.
Oh, I love that.
We're gonna connect. So let's just do that.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I have to look at it that way because I got some stuff going on in here. And so I always think today might be my last day on the planet. So like, which is funny because I tend to be pretty upbeat and optimistic.
Yeah.
So I started just bringing that to my performances where it's like, I don't want to forget this. I want to make sure I'm present. And it's also, Kathy brings a strength that we've actually learned a lot from each other. She's always so kind about how I gave such great advice or yelled it into your face. Kathy's mechanics, like I've been saying this since you came on the scene, Kathy, you're one of the best writers in Boston right now. And it's like, I just have learned a lot about mechanics from you, where I really kind of rested on being charming for many years with stand up.
It took you pretty far.
I've done okay for myself. I probably could have done better. I've never been quick to do anything the right way. So yeah, I think letting go of a lot of that and just kind of being thankful that I get to do it. And then also realizing that it's okay to like really obsess over a joke. I don't have to take it, you know, and I like to work my stuff out on the stage. Like I'm pretty brazen that way, where like I'll get an idea and just go try it, even if it's half baked.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
One of those things like with the iPhones has totally changed it for me is that all of my students, I'm like, you got to start recording yourself all the time. You got to start, once you have your set, that's my process anyways, that I write a recording of my set once I have it and listening to it in the car, with my earbuds all the time. And then I also tell them you have to be keeping a list on your phone or however you do it of ideas, because they come at such random times, right? These ideas.
I used to have a pad next to my bed, but now anytime I have an idea, I just put it straight into the voice memo. And I used to write because I come at it from writing and I had to get out of my head. That was a long journey. And in touch with my emotions. And they're like, oh my God. Somebody had me on stage once at the improv. It was a class. And two things. They said, do I hate and I love. So I did, I love, and I did, I hate. And they're like, I don't know. Like what? And it's a long way of saying, I learned that I hate is more interesting for people to hear from you. But just anyway, you just have to be in touch with your emotions. I'm going back to something else that someone said about being in the moment and connecting. Another year I spent every time before I go out on the stage, the one word I'd say to myself is connect.
Mm.
you know, look like somebody in the audience is your girlfriend and connect with that person, but really feel that audience. I like to walk a show before a show and just feel them and see them. And, you know, I can sort of tell where they are, but it also sometimes gives me someone to say something off of.
I used to focus only on that one person who wasn't laughing, or like that table. And it took me a long time to let that go. And then I just started to relax. It'd be a long time to relax up there because I was such an actor, perfectionist, whatever I was approaching. But this thing about a mentor that Kelly said too is so important. You know, just having people guiding you. Like Jane's been a huge mentor to me. And then we met Jane through Ron Poole, who was my first comedy teacher and used to do this great show at Don't Tell Mamas.
Yeah.
And I took a comedy class. And before then I'd just been kind of writing and doing comedy, but taking a class is, you know, is key because it is, you know, it is an art form.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said too. Like, I was having a conversation yesterday on a show that I was a guest on, and we were talking about how, like, I think a lot of times people are too afraid to try something new, and everybody at this point has kind of had to do a reset, I feel like. So whether you're a comedian or you're in sales or you're in business for yourself or you are
A
customer
lady of the
service,
night.
a lady of the night, Kat.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks,
I'm
Kat.
unemployment right now.
We have a lot of those out in the burbs. This is a good time. There's a lot of free classes that you can take everywhere. Like, you've always wanted to paint. If you've always wanted to tap dance. If you've always wanted to learn more about storytelling, this is a good time to do it.
Yeah.
That investment.
So true. And that it's available and it's free, a lot of it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Also,
and
it's
there's a lot
not
of
free
free-
sometimes. KellyMacFarland.com for all of the coaching.
No, you should not work for free.
We all do one-on-one coaching here. Just so
We all do. Everybody on this call. No.
Well, and then how many people like ask you, like when this gets happen all the time too, and I get a lot of students in my class who watch Comedy Central and think it can just happen, right? And then they get
Sure,
asked how much work it is.
sure.
But then I also have people out there in the public who, once they know I'm a comedian, just wanted to, you know, like doctors, like want to give me like jokes to try. And then I always play it back and say, you know, you should take a class, you know, what's the big deal? You take 1 6-week class, you do a 3-minute set, you don't invite anybody, and then you've gotten it out of your system and you see if you can do it. So I'm always encouraging people just to try it because so many people want to do stand-up, but they're just too intimidated.
I'm going to be sexy. Go ahead.
When I was having my kitchen remodeled, my contractor found out I did comedy, and he was like, "Oh, I've got a few jokes for your skit," and so he gave them to me. He's like, "You can have them."
Oh, thank you.
A couple weeks later, he came back because I thought he was just gonna, you know, measure the countertops, and he's like, "Hey, listen, I feel really bad about this. I've never done this before, but I'm gonna have to take my jokes back.
That's great.
I'm gonna start comedy." And I'm like,
Of course you are.
"Hey." But it's not like an edible arrangement or something. Well, let me just go get that for you. You know?
I think people in the beginning don't realize you have to write for your persona. And even when I love, you know, a lot of comedy buddies, and well, actually not that many, but like when we help each other, we all have to bear in mind that it's probably going to come out in our voice. You know, like you'll meet my friend Brad in a couple of weeks, but like when Brad suggests something for me, it's really Brad speaking, you know, and sometimes it works for me, a mom in the suburbs, and sometimes it doesn't, you know, and you have to have your own internal ear. I think the biggest thing that beginners don't realize is, well, first of all, it takes so long to get your persona, but there's so much time you have to spend in the trenches, just, you know, trying this and that. You know, it's a long haul. That's why I think the spoils go to the persistent.
Yeah.
I think one of the big mistakes people make too is that when they first start, they start writing about things that they think people think they should be writing about.
Oh yeah.
I wonder what people think I should be telling jokes about. Now I'm going to try to write jokes about what people think I should be telling jokes about, instead of like, what do you have to say?
Right. I love what you have to say. And another thing I used to put at the top of yellow legal pad for myself to remind myself was, how do you feel about this? How do you, I mean, Kelly, you would go naturally to that as a performer. I'm talking to the writers. But like, how do you feel? Because for me, as an uptight Connecticut person now, but formerly an uptight Massachusetts person, it just we didn't talk about our feelings so much, and it was the Irish Catholic thing. But then I lived in Japan, where the nail that stands up is hammered down. They really don't talk about their feelings. Like I was an open book, right? Like your Japanese wife. I mean, like
We used to have to, in the beginning, because I was coming from a therapy place, and in the beginning we used to have to set an egg timer for 3 minutes. I kid you not, because that is as long as she could talk about feelings. And now it's like no problem, but like it was unbearable for her because culturally it just she had no experience.
Yeah, they're
Her
very.
parents they don't even say I love you. I don't think there's even any language for I love you in Japanese.
It is, but like I remember studying Japanese when we lived there, and I said, "What is it?" And she said, "Like, so kana." You know, it was like a really difficult.
But also like really open my eyes to like doesn't mean they don't love each other. Yeah, it's just
finally I got her to say "aiteimasu" or "aiteiru," less formal. But like she wasn't comfortable. Like it's like they say "hi dozo," like go ahead. We don't have an expression for that. It was sort of like that. It's like, well, we feel these things, Jane, but why would we possibly say them? It was just I thought I was repressed until I lived in Japan.
right.
But did your wife grow up here or over there?
She grew up all over the world. She never lived in Japan. Her mom is Japanese, but her dad was a diplomat from Thailand. So she was born in Rome and then Germany, Thailand, Singapore, Canada, Mexico, New York. So just they were always moving. But culturally, she was raised by Asian parents.
Oh, I forget her name. What's her name?
Yeah. Mina and Pia. Go figure. We're just trying to mess with you.
And Pia. Anyway, if you have a Japanese mom, though,
Oh, she does.
you're going to be pretty Japanese. Do you know what I mean? Like I get very confused now when I meet like Japanese Americans because I don't know how Japanese they are. Do you know what I mean? They're
right. It really depends where if they were raised, because her mom was raised in Japan. So she had a very Southeast Asian upbringing, culturally, wherever they lived. But it's so true because like the comics that I love are the ones that are bringing all that persona. Right. And so when I get my students in the door, the first assignment is to have them identify a comedian who they really like, because they all watch comedy.
That's great. Who do they say? Who do they say?
A lot of them like Chris Rock. A lot of them like people I've never heard of. A lot of them like comedians a lot of them like Ellen. A lot of them like comedians who swear a lot. And but I have them show a little clip, but then they have to really unpack like, why is this person funny to you? Like, you can't just say, oh, he's cool. Like, I really encourage them and then pull it out of them. Like, what is making you laugh? Because that's how to get to your persona, I think, is like,
Kelly,
what are you trying to say?
What do you do first with kids or young people or adults in your class? What's one of the first things you do with them?
I make them tell stories in their own voice. So like, I have some exercises that I've come up with, and I've shared them with Kathy, and she shared hers with me, where it's like, I think this comes from years of like having students that show up in class and they're really just like the poor man's Amy Schumer or the poor man's Jerry Seinfeld. And I'm like, who are you though? Like, tell me who you are, because we already have one of those. And just so you know, there can only be one of those. They're very famous. So figure out who you are. So I like to get them talking about stuff and having a point of view, right? Like having an opinion. So yeah, I do some exercises with them where I'm just assigning them random topics.
And then do you say like, don't worry about being funny?
Don't worry about being funny. Yeah. Be authentic, be your true self.
Yeah.
I tell this story a lot, I feel like, in every interview, but my very good friend, and he's a friend to everyone, Tony V, when I first started doing stand-up, we did a road gig together, and I was very new. I was probably like maybe a year in or something. And we rode to the gig together, and we were having so much fun. We were just like laughing and cutting up. And then we did the gig, and I did fine. And then we got in the car and we were driving back home, and it was a long ride both ways, 2 hours. And he said towards the middle of the drive home, he said, you know, you're very funny just being yourself. So I don't know who you're being on stage. You should try this because this is actually really funny. And the other person, I don't know who she is, but I ditch that and just be yourself. So I always tell my students that when I'm teaching, that I think
that's such great advice.
Yeah,
I
like-
got that too. Like, but Jane, you're hysterical over here. Why are you doing this? You know,
Mhm.
I think that bleeds over too into like, you know, civilian folks too, who aren't in our business, because I did sales for many years and like client management and client retention. And I used to like think I had to like, oh, I'm wearing the suit. So hello, how are you today? And then as soon as I like switched gears and just was my normal self,
yeah.
I started doing better and thriving in that environment. So everybody should just
Mm.
be your
That
true
is really
self.
great advice.
Yeah, I
Kathy, how do
agree.
you start them off?
One of the things I do is that I have those prompt writing books.
Mm.
Basically, they're for teenage girls where you can take quizzes and stuff. And I take a few of those pages, but I ask people to write down 25 facts about themselves.
Oh, great.
And then I take one of the facts, which is usually something obscure, like I like bananas, and I ask them to talk about it for a minute, and just really expand upon it. Because one, that's one of the ways we get material, right, where we really just focus in on something. But two, it gets to that thing of like, see, you do have an opinion about this, and sometimes if you can, you know, peel away the layers.
Bananas.
You can
Nice.
get to that stuff, and that's just one of the ways you can get at some of your material.
I like to say to people, show me your world, you know, and I don't even care their point of view. Like Bill Hicks was doing, both of my parents died of lung cancer, and Bill Hicks does a very pro-smoking bit. He's very pro-smoking, and I really like it. And that's where it made me think, just show me your world. Take me into your world, you know, as minute and specific as you can get. But the exercise that I really liked that Tommy Koenig did in New York, and by the way, I'm going to be totally sexist here. I steer I steer both classes both sexes to classes, but I steer the girls a little more because the open mics are so, it's pretty bad. I don't know if it was bad up in Boston, but it was, you know, I masturbate and I live in my mother's bedroom, but no, oh God, now I'm getting worse. Okay.
Wow.
My mother's basement, and I have no money. And
We all heard it, Jane. You said it.
Not so
What do you
uptight
say?
after all.
Tell us who.
no, but
I know what you mean.
like I was the only person in the audience who would listen to the other people, you know, and like and I just thought, you know, okay, you'll get your Amy Schumer set, but you know, so I just say to them, look, people are just going to be a little more respectful in the classes. And also I feel like you can get further faster by having just a gentle guide of the teacher. By the way, how do you guys, any of you feel about, do you let the class chime in and make suggestions?
Yeah. I was just thinking about that when Kath was talking about the writing and the, you know, like write about this for a minute or talk about this for a minute. So I do, like, I steer the car, but I definitely, if a comic in my class is they're so close to that rule of threes, like we're just, you know, we can see it, but we can't just get that right phrase, then we'll just brainstorm together and we'll bring in like a comedy writer's room. Because I also want my students to know that, look, you may not end up working as a comic on stage, but there's a lot of work in the comedy room. So I want them to be aware of that as well. But yeah, we definitely chime in and write jokes together for a comic. Yeah.
You guys?
I do that part where you're like, if something comes to somebody like, oh, when you're saying this, I thought of this. But the technical part, I find sometimes they mislead them. Like, I think you should do more of that interpretive dance in the middle. We all liked it. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff gets kind of misguided.
Yeah.
But the stuff about like, what did you think of this? What did you remember? Did you guys have something to contribute to that?
What made you laugh?
Yeah. I like to ask, what did we like about that? That's what I always ask.
That's a nice one.
What did we like about that? And what I find, I always set off typically these classes are 8 weeks or so. So it's
Yeah.
like, I always tell them in the first class, like, if you don't need to be giving your advice or your voice. That's not what feedback's for.
Right.
Be an audience member for a moment and
Yeah.
don't think about yourself, which I know is really hard. And just be present when the other person's performing. And
That's
then,
great. See,
yeah.
that's the difference from
That's
the
great.
open mics, and just to have all those people like brainstorming with you, as you say, Mina, like it's a writer's room. One little trick I loved, or technique, I should say, I should elevate it, that Tommy Koenig did in New York was the first time you joined his class, and I got many of my comedy buddies out of his class, he would have you go down front. It was sort of, raked seating in some rent a room, West 42nd. And actually it was an old Showland. It was an old peep show play. But anyway, we're gonna let that go. Okay, so anyway, the
Wow.
price was right. The price was right to rent the room.
Wash your hands.
Ladies of the night.
No, I washed my whole body when I would come home from that thing. Okay, but I just love this little exercise he had, which was he'd put the new person down front and he would say, don't say anything. And then he'd give index cards to everybody in the class and say, now write some adjectives or nouns, write anything about this person, who you think they are.
Mm.
And by God, I get back my index cards, suburban, mom, soccer mom. I mean, they didn't get uptight. That was the reveal. But they, with no words. Like, I like the idea when he had, though, of the no words too, because then you can tell accent, then you can tell high, low, socioeconomic, little.
Oh,
It
I
was
like that.
really just straight on. So yes, you get clues from clothing and the way they hold themselves, but I just thought that was a great exercise. And little did we know that he was giving us the gift of telling people partially who your persona was. As
Oh,
we
yeah.
all know, that's the David that you're chiseling from the stone.
Because the audience does that before you even open your mouth.
Right.
You walk
Exactly.
out, what are you wearing? What's your height? What's your look?
If
So they've
you're
already done
bald,
it by the
you
time
better
you start.
address it. Yeah, if you're bald, you better address it up front, or if you have one leg, they might notice, and
You're wearing heels. I don't know. Like, yeah.
yeah. So I just always thought that was so interesting. And then, have you ever had a kid in your class you don't like,
Oh yeah.
or
Oh,
who's
yeah.
hard to work with? Any advice on that?
Oh yeah. Gosh. We don't have
Tell
a lot
them to their face.
I like to find them a role where they can really thrive. So those students sometimes end up being my backstage crew or a stage manager, or I've always tried to find a way that they can be within their wheelhouse of skills and feel good about what they're doing, and then not necessarily be bothering me with what I'm trying to do.
Oh, that's why they always put me in tech. No, I'm kidding.
You have to be quiet. That wouldn't work.
Oh no, quiet. that
But
was-
yeah, no, you got to get creative, right? With finding out, what's going to make them feel comfortable. Because usually when people are being disruptive or a pain in the neck, is because they're not feeling like they're being useful or they don't have a purpose.
Ah,
I just find them a purpose. Yeah, and sometimes you just can't. I mean,
I think with adults, what I find is that everybody takes it for a different reason. Like some are trying to be, the next Chris Rock, but some people are just trying to like get through a hard time, or they just moved here and they're, that, or all the improv classes were all filled, so they're going to take this. You just right.
That happens a
You just
lot.
understand-
someone got it as a
Right,
present from someone. They got it as a birthday
But
gift.
just understanding what their thing is, because if they are somebody who's like, yeah, no, I really want to do this. This is not just something to check off my bucket list, but I really want to do this.
Yeah.
Well, then you can have a more frank conversation with them about, like, if you really want to do this, and what you really have to do is you have to come prepared, or whatever it is that they're holding back on. But if they're just doing it, to get through the day or whatever it is, then have fun with it. Great. That's awesome.
yeah.
You get protective of those students sometimes, the ones who are really trying
It's
it.
enough, right? You don't have to be Ellen. It's enough. You just
I mean, that was me when I started. I didn't have any, grandeur of like going any further than taking a class.
So when did you get all this ambition?
you just, well, you fall for it, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
you
it's
just
an
fall
addiction.
into it.
Yeah.
So.
Cal, tough student.
I mean, I've returned money before. I think I'm
love
kind
you.
of,
I
I mean, I feel like I'm kind of a hard ass where it's like, I just don't. I had a student once who told me, I gave her feedback and she told me, well, I mean, what have you honestly done with your life? Like, do you really feel like you're qualified? And I just kept her after class and I was like, you know what? I'm happy to refund your money. Like out, and I do a lot of my teaching through a nonprofit theater in Cambridge in Central Square, and Kathy as well. So it's like
Improv Boston.
the
Look them
Improv Boston,
I know.
amazing organization. They, you know, their comedy school is really large with improv and sketch and stand up, and they support, like, we don't want negative students. We don't want students that treat you poorly. We want the students to have a really positive, wonderful experience, and we want our instructors to have the same. So they've always been super supportive. And I've had a couple one-on-one clients where I'm like, let's have a heart to heart here. Like, I'm happy to give you back your money. If you don't think you're getting, if you're going to fight me every time we have a session,
Yeah.
then I don't really know what good I am to you. So I'm happy to
Mhm.
return it. And once you call them out on that, I think fear makes people behave in a certain way.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're afraid they're not doing it right, or they're afraid that they're wicked nervous, and they're vulnerable. And so I think my thing is like, lean into being vulnerable, like that we grow at the edge. So
Yeah.
you lashing out at me isn't helping anything. I'm still going to go do my spots every week and I'm going to make money at this. So you can't hurt me. Like, tell me what you need, right? Like, we're all here to learn.
Well, there has to be accountability, like what Kath is saying about all those different kinds of students for different reasons. And then if, you know, if the focus is on the one who's being difficult, or my big thing is somebody who doesn't share the air. That's always my big thing that I try to be on my eye out for, because there's some people who take comedy class just because they think it's their show.
Right. Yeah.
And then what about all those people that Kath mentioned who just really need some space to try it, and we can't have people dominating.
Right.
So you have to call people out on that stuff for
Do
sure.
people have a preference? I have a preference between doing it one-on-one with a student or doing a group. I have a pretty strong preference.
I
Well,
like
what-
one-on-one. One-on-one to me is better because I feel like you can get into it. And, you know, part of the hard part of the job is just managing a lot of different personalities or different like levels of expectation or fear. And that takes so much. I don't know about you guys, but I'm exhausted after like 2.5 hours.
Oh, teaching is totally exhausting.
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't get a lot of opportunity, but I would totally prefer one-on-one too. Because it's more, I think you can coach comedy. It's not really that you're teaching it.
Right.
Very, very
I think
well
if
said.
If you have
Yes.
a class
Yeah.
and, you know, comics don't laugh at each other, and actors don't really necessarily aren't very nice to each other either in an acting class. So you're not going to get that audience response from a group. So they might as well just
Yeah.
not be there and just work with the
Yeah.
comic.
What do you think, Cal?
I mean, when it comes to stand up, I would 10 times rather teach brand spanking new folks, because I feel like it's a level playing field.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot. And I've noticed that about teaching improv as well. So like my favorite level of improv to teach is 101, like, because it's just a love fest.
Yeah.
It's like helping people discover that they are risk takers, and they're willing to try something new, and they surprise themselves and they get super excited. And when you get in those higher levels, that's when ego starts to like really come into play.
I think you can model good behavior when
Yeah.
you're doing the beginners. And that's really kind of important. I like to mold them.
Yeah.
When they're starting out, I like a big group. And it's my style. Do you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
impose my style on them, which but I think, you know, it's, you know, a love style, you know, it's not that critical, and you're going to try to make everybody a star. And then as they move further along, then I can do the one-on-one, but I almost prefer to have a comedy buddy with me the thing is, it's not teaching when you do it with a friend. Do you know what I mean? That one-on-one, I totally love and adore. That's comedy buddy stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But we had one recalcitrant person. It was a college intercession we were teaching.
Recalcitrant.
Yes, very fancy.
We're
And
teaching an SAT class. So.
Go on,
Vocab
Jean.
quiz.
God, it's been a long time since the SATs, thank God.
Good word. I like
But
it.
the this young, well, first of all, my own personal difficulty was that this young man smoked, you know, and my dad died when I was 15. So I'm like, I will actually go up to people and say, you know, and the boys will say to me, Mom, settle down, please, don't say anything, you know, because I just got on a mission because I know what you can lose. And what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so he smoked and he was very, you know, hipper, cooler than thou, you know, the black leather jacket, it's all right, you know, but I was, and I was co-teaching it actually with Jimmy Tingle, who's, you know, wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
And this kid was a hard nut to crack. I mean, everybody else was coming. It was just a 1 week, you know, blitzkrieg of teaching them. And they all pretty much had something to begin with, or they had improv background or act, you know, they weren't that hard to mold or to bring. I'm not saying I make anybody funny, but I can bring you to another level, you know. It helps if we start out with something. But this kid, the last class was Friday. We're going to perform Friday night at that wonderful man Rick, the comic studio. No,
At the comedy studio.
comedy studio. Sorry, and you know that was going to be their big reward at the end. It was so nice of him to let us. And the everybody was ready except this kid. I was just tearing my hair out because I wanted to make him a success, and yet, you know, he was a handful. And Jimmy and I actually did the switch. Like, okay, he smokes. He likes to get on people's nerves. He's got a leather jacket. That's actually his point of view. So encourage him to go that way. Instead of bringing him over to the love session, just make him and he was
Yeah.
great. But it took us changing. That was a very interesting one because, you know, usually I'm right, but no, but that one,
I just embrace who you are, though. Like, let him.
Right.
well, yeah, it took us a while to embrace who he was,
Mhm.
you know, and it was actually quite satisfying in the end that we could help him find his point of view. I mean, it felt like he was being annoying just to be annoying.
Oh yeah, negative attention. And especially if he kept coming back to class, he clearly wanted to be there because a kid like that just wouldn't show up.
Okay,
Right.
well, this is speaking from years and years of experience, Mina. Thank you. That's actually very good insight. Yeah, he wanted to be there. And these kids, I remember, you know, they were in college, and I'm thinking, you know, this is great. They get to scratch the itch. They get to try this out. These were like really smart kids. And I sat them all down beforehand. We were at the comedy studio, and I said, look, your parents are paying a lot in tuition. If you can cure cancer, please stop this now and cure cancer. Okay, because they were all Harvard kids, and they're like, I may be, these people, they could be leaders, they could cure cancer, but they could also be assholes, but they weren't in our class. But I just felt a little badly from the parents' point of view, like, oh, now you want to do stand up? Oh, that's great. You know, so I did say to them, if you can cure cancer, forget about this for now. You can, after you cure cancer, then you go back to stand up. But anyway,
You have choices.
what?
Make the right ones. I just feel like you were saying to them, you have choices.
Have any of you ever, I always wanted to do this. Have any ever taught stand up with senior citizens? Because they have stories.
I don't know if I'd have the patience. I love them dearly, but I remember being a little, I don't know how to say my reaction, what it was, but let me put it this way. The first time I did a senior citizen center, the guy who was booking it said, I just want you to know, you know, Jane, that half of our people are going to love you and the other half can't hear you. And I'm just not sure that I really have the patience. But has anybody done it? Have you done it, Mina?
Not yet, but I really, once we can be back out there, it's something I'd like to pitch.
It's really fun, actually.
Really?
Some
What
of my
your
favorite
experience?
students have been people north of age 65 70.
Well, people north of 65 ain't dead yet,
No,
Kelly.
but I'm saying like, they're retired and
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
Kathy, that student that we've all had, what was his name? He was a widower.
Yeah. I forget.
John,
Yeah.
this guy, he was in his
Everybody's.
70s and like late 70s, and he was just a delight. He took my class like 5 times.
Oh,
And
sweet.
he would always come back with something new and like, okay, this time I'm going to talk about how my darling and I met at XYZ, and I'd be like, great, let's dig into that.
Next week it's going to be the war.
Yes, and then the
Because they
war.
have experiences, right? So many experiences to share.
Yeah,
Well, you
very
know what?
nice.
If you can do that, I think you got a big wide open market there, Mina, because
That's why she's my mentor. She's always drumming up business for me.
but you could. I'd
Yeah.
always thought of doing the assisted living tour, but then I did a couple of them. And well, they don't pay that well. They're a good
Yeah.
audience, the ones who can hear you. But I think you're going in to pull out their stories. Oh my God, they would. And you could do it in the afternoon. You wouldn't have to even go out at
Like
night.
this show. It's a great time. It's 4:00.
Mm-hmm.
But you could also, you could do that in the afternoon and do your stand up at night. So you could
There
do
you
a twofer, But I just think, are we running long, Catherine? Should we be getting, yes.
We're
Holy
just having such a great conversation. We're sorry.
Oh my God, I do apologize. This is our longest show ever. I just got kind of carried away because you all had, thank you, so many good things to say. And Mina, thank you for coming back. It was a
I
great
love being with you all. Thank you for having me, really.
Yeah, no,
Thank
and
you.
watch her on her Instagram stories and be like
My
Leslie.
Corona minute. I'm gonna go
We gotta
record
get
it
out
right
of
now.
here. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, everybody. Bye, Kath. Bye, Kelly.
Bye.
Thank
Good
you.
seeing
Thanks,
you.
Jane.